of the owners to control.
Right?
It's the right of the owners to control.
Right? That's just what some owners say, okay? So, copyright? What's copyright? Here we go!
Copyrights for the people. Copyrights to promote creativity, balancing rights of users and owners of intellectual property.
That's a fancy name for the stuff that we create. We write, we build, we play. The ideas that we make.
So far, owners are telling the story of what copyright means.
What you are about to hear is not the whole story.
Let's hear it for Big C. I'm an owner, not a donor. Copyright's for me. Let me tell you how it's gonna be. I'm the one who knows. Look at all the things I own and all the copyrights I hold, all under my control. I'll warn you once, then I'll tell you I told you so. Copyrights for the folks who own.
Hold the phone.
Owners' rights ain't the only rights for copyright.
Once again,
Owners' rights ain't the only rights for copyright. Copyright? What's copyright?
It's the right of the owners to control.
Right?
No.
Copyright? What's copyright?
It's the right of the owners to control.
Right?
It's the right of the owners to control.
Right?
No.
That's just what some owners say, okay? So, copyright? What's copyright?
Here we go. Copyrights for the people. Copyrights to promote creativity, balancing rights of users and owners of intellectual property.
Audio, video, DVD, any file you can copy, hear, read, or see is intellectual property.
The rights of owners are overstated. Warnings on DVDs, downloads, photocopies, TV shows. The degree of control is somewhat inflated. What we need is a balance. Know what I'm saying? Shout it out loud.
Users have rights too to critique, comment, and review. First Amendment gives a right to use copyrighted works made by whoever. Copyright? What's copyright?
Copyrights for the people. Copyrights to promote creativity, balancing rights of users and owners of intellectual property.
Balance is the key. If you take it from me, I'm a user and I'm making my own audio, video, creatively. Inspired by the things I hear and see. Face it, Big C. Your fans are producers, your artists are users, so balance is key. Now sing it with me!
Copyright? What's copyright?
Copyrights for the people.
Copyright? What's copyright?
Copyrights to promote creativity,
Copyright? What's copyright?
balancing rights of users and owners of intellectual property.
Users have rights too to critique, comment, and review. First Amendment gives a right to use copyrighted works made by whoever.
Hey everybody, this is Steven Netzker, and I hope you enjoyed that short video which introduced you to the topic of copyright. Throughout most of my time at Azusa Pacific University, I have heard a different range of things regarding the use of media and copyrighted material in the classroom. I heard that you can only use 15 minutes at a time of video to 33 seconds of audio recordings, and even heard that you cannot use anything at all, especially from Disney. Today, I hope to give you a firmer understanding of what a teacher can legally do in regards to using copyrighted material in the classroom, and with this knowledge, your future should look brighter as an educator. Most of the information I researched comes from a book, Copyright Clarity by Renee Hobbs. Let's look at an important legal term called fair use. Section 107 of the Copyright Law of 1976. Users have the right to use copyrighted materials without payment or permission, depending on the specific context and situation of the use. Making reference to, using, or quoting from the work of others is an example of fair use. I don't need to ask authors permission or pay someone to quote from their work as I develop my own ideas. Transformativeness is the term emerging for the repurposing of copyrighted materials as part of the creative process. With the rise of digital media, transformativeness is becoming a valuable concept in both education and copyright law. Have you ever heard of the Code of Best Practices in Fair Use for Media Literacy Education? It was adopted by National Association for Media Literacy Education and the National Council of Teachers of English. It was also adopted by the Association of College and Research Libraries, National Association for Media Literacy Education, Action Coalition for Media Education, and the International Communication Association. These codes of best practices are just guidelines. They're not law-binding at all. Recall Section 107, the Fair Use Doctrine of the Copyright Law of 1976. The fair use of a copyrighted work is not an infringement of copyright. This includes reproduction and copies for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, including multiple copies for classroom use, scholarship, or research, and determining whether the use made of a work in any particular case is fair use. The factors to be considered shall include the purpose and character of the use, including whether such use is of a commercial nature or is for non-profit educational purposes, the nature of the copyrighted work, the amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole, and the effect of the use upon the potential market for or value of the copyrighted work. So fair use outlines 4 factors: the purpose of the use, the nature of the copyrighted work, the amount used, and the market impact. Now, there are limited educational exemptions for classroom instruction. Section 110 Item 1 is the part of the Copyright Act of 1976 that allows educators to use lawfully made copies of copyrighted materials in the classroom or a similar place devoted to instruction for educational purposes. What is a lawfully made copy? Examples of a lawfully made copies are a photocopy of a printed article, a school-purchased DVD, a privately purchased copy of a DVD, an off-air taped movie, a rental DVD from Netflix or Blockbuster. Section 110 Item 1 is like a narrow layer of extra protection for educators who use print or digital copy materials in face-to-face teaching situations. But we should never interpret the law as saying we can only use copyrighted materials in face-to-face teaching situations. For other situations, educators can rely on the doctrine of fair use. Now, there have been negotiated agreements on fair use. Have you heard about the 10% rule or the 30-second rule or the 45-day rule? These ridiculous rules that verge on the side of lunacy come from the 1976 Agreement on Guidelines for Classroom Photocopying and Not-for-Profit Educational Institutions, Guidelines for Educational Uses of Music, and the 1981 Guidelines for Off-Air Recording of Broadcast Programming for Educational Purposes, and the Fair Use Guidelines for Educational Multimedia. Developed through voluntary negotiations among stakeholders, including lawyers from the world of publishing and various educational organizations, these various guidelines are not the law. Again, these guidelines are not the law. The key that unlocks the doctrine of fair use is the idea of transformativeness. That is, has the user added value or repurposed the work? Instead of relying on lawyers, librarians, or school administrators to tell us what is and what is not fair use, educators and students need to make that determination for themselves. That's what the copyright law both permits and requires. Here is a case study that will help us exercise our new fair use muscles. In October of 2003, DK published Grateful Dead, The Illustrated Trip in collaboration with Grateful Dead Production. This book traces the illustrious career of the Grateful Dead in chronological order. The book uses 2,000 images which surround its history. Prior to publication, DK attempted to get permission from Bill Graham Archives to reproduce 7 posters and concert ticket images. The archives wanted a lot of money for the images and were going to charge a ridiculous fee. So instead of paying the fee, DK used the images anyway. Bill Graham sued DK for copyright infringement. DK argued that they were within the parameters of fair use under the Copyright Act of 1976. The U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York and later the Second Circuit Court judge ruled in favor of DK, the book publisher. So it turns out that DK did not have to pay or ask or need the permission to use the images since they were using the material under fair use. So why is it the case that DK's use of the materials not considered a copyright infringement? Fair use involves a case-by-case analysis of context and situation concerning the usage of copyright materials. 4 primary factors that are considered are 1. The purpose of and character of the use, 2. The nature of the copyrighted work, 3. The amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole, and 4. The effect of the use upon the potential market for or value of the copyrighted work. There may be other factors to consider as well, but in this case study, the courts evaluated whether or not the book by DK was transformative in nature in order to be justified under fair use. The questions that the judges typically ask are, does the new work supersede the objects of the original creation, or does it add something new with a further purpose or different character? Does the use of copyrighted material alter the first by giving new meaning and expression or message? As one judge puts it, the ultimate test of fair use is whether the copyright law's goal of promoting the progress of science and the useful arts would be better served by allowing the use than by preventing it. In considering the posters and tickets that were used in DK's publication, the original design or intent of these items were to promote the musicians using art. The posters were designed to attract consumers to buy concert tickets. In contrast, DK wanted to use the materials as historical artifacts. The publishers placed the images in a chronological order that helped illustrate the history of the Grateful Dead, whereas the original use was for commercial purposes. Since the book was to commemorate historical events of the Grateful Dead and was arranged in a creative fashion, the court held in favor of the fair use claim. Even though Bill Graham had all rights to these images and had a licensing system in place for charging fees for the use of their works, they could not control the transformative use of their copyrighted materials. The Second Circuit Court judge wrote, "In a case such as this, a copyright holder cannot prevent others from entering fair use markets merely by developing or licensing a market for parody, news reporting, educational, or other transformative uses of its own creative work. Moreover, a publisher's willingness to pay license fees for reproduction of images does not establish that the publisher may not, in the alternative, make fair use of those images." In other words, just because the New York Times has a system in place to charge educators for the use of their works does not mean you cannot already use it in accordance to fair use. Or if a photojournalist charges a newspaper for using his/her images does not mean that I cannot use it freely as inspiration for my own creative artwork and sell it on the open market. Fair use is designed to promote all forms of creativity. There is a lot of misrepresentation and falsity that pervades the education arena in regards to copyright. This has led many teachers to copyright phobia, an unhealthy fear that can greatly hinder the development of students in the classroom. Enjoy this last video and be cured of your copyright phobia.
Human rights, section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. The doctrine of fair use tells us that we can use a quote stuck with no pay, no permission. We can use or quote copyrighted material without permission or paying a license fee. When the cost to the copyright holder is less than the benefits for society. Yeah. Fair use has many strengths. Most of all, it is flexible, but some people find it too vague because it is contextual. Context and situation situation. Determine how fair use applies. We can use or quote copyrighted material without permission or paying a license fee. When the cost to the copyright holder is less than the benefits for society. How will I know when fair use applies to my situation? You must think through these 4 factors: the nature of the use, the purpose of the use, the amount of the use, and the effect on potential markets. But there's really one really important factor: transformativeness. Transformativeness. Add value, repurpose. Transformativeness. Add value, repurpose. Transformativeness. Add value, repurpose. Transformativeness. Add value, repurpose. We can use or quote copyrighted material without permission or paying a license fee. When the cost to the copyright holder is less than the benefits for society. So when you quote or use a copyrighted work, just ask yourself, did I repurpose? Did I add value? Did I repurpose? Ask myself, why did I use it? Is it different from why it was created? If it was, it's probably fair use. Did I add value to the original in terms of the cultural or the money market value? If I did, then it is fair use. We can use or quote copyrighted material without permission or paying a license fee. When the cost to the copyright holder is less than the benefits for society.